The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
Day 2 of Fargo 2018 rolls on. Jason Bryan here at the Short Time Wrestling Podcast, joined by one of the most recent inductees in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, the second woman ever as a distinguished member, multiple-time world champion and world medalist. She's got more medals than I actually won matches. Kristie Davis, the head women's coach at Emmanuel College down in Franklin Springs, Georgia. Kristie, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Fargo, we were talking a little bit yesterday about this. For the girls, this wasn't around when you were coming through. We're in the same age demo, so women's wrestling was still kind of new when we were breaking into the sport. And when you look around and see there's a cadet division, there's a junior women's division that's been around like 16 years. How does this make you feel as a former athlete?
It makes me feel pretty good. Just watching this sport grow for over the 20 years that I've been in it is, it kind of melts my heart a little bit, just because numbers are going up and girls are getting this chance that I actually didn't have, to win a national championship at that age group. But it's good. It's good for the sport, and I'm really excited for these young wrestlers to come up and, do what I did.
You had a judo background, which really led to your unique style of wrestling. It was something that when you wrestled internationally, it gave some different looks. Maybe the Japanese had the background in some judo as well. But when you have to switch over to wrestling from a sport that is a combat sport, what were some of the difficulties you had as an athlete adjusting to freestyle wrestling that the girls now don't necessarily have as much of a learning curve, so to speak?
Just a couple of things that I had problems with is the biggest thing was I was comfortable on my back. In judo, you have that position where you can just fight off your back. Other than that, I feel like that's why I had such a good transition, because a lot of my judo background as far as throws and everything like that kind of obviously correlated into wrestling. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I think a lot of girls are starting younger and getting more of the basics, the fundamentals down, instead of just kind of jumping into it and winging it and not really knowing what to do. So, I don't know.
One thing about the girls' numbers here, they're growing, and the way people are talking about the growth of women's wrestling comes from girls wrestling other girls. And, Wrestle Like a Girl with Sally, what she's doing in the USA High School Sanctioning Committee with Joan Fulp Allen and Andrea Yamamoto. They're working on getting state high school associations. From girls wrestling girls seems to be a better way to retain athletes, girls that want to wrestle, compared to, okay, you're the one girl on the boys team getting, a lot of better term, getting beat up a lot of the times. And, there's the toughness that comes with that, but that's not a way to really keep people in it. How beneficial have you seen from your own daughter, from Kayla Wrestling, that, girls wrestling other girls in competition breeds more people to come into the sport?
Yeah, absolutely. And just speaking from experience with Kayla, I know I go and I talk about it because Kayla wrestled 2 years in Oklahoma. It was a pretty tough state, and then went to Georgia and wrestled 2 years. And all 4 years, it was kind of like literally a roller coaster. I mean, she had such a high, she came off such a high from wrestling girls and doing well in the girls' tournaments. And then we come to the fall season, high school season, or winter season, and I literally, had to, beg her to stay in the sport because, I had to convince her that everything that she was doing during the guy season, even though she was taking her shot, she was getting beat up pretty much, and she was at 138 pounds, so it wasn't like she was, any lighter, but it was really hard to kind of convince her, that everything that she was doing was paying off. And, I can tell a difference now. It's, she's entered her first year in college and just has been wrestling girls, and she's just, I haven't had to work on her attitude. I haven't had to, talk her off the ledge and say, hey, look, your season's coming up, because her season is constantly against girls now. So it's very helpful.
Your better half just drifting in front of us, Link Davis, he's the head men's coach at Emmanuel, which just got its official Division II recognition. So they're in that transition from the NAI to Division II. You're officially appointed the women's coach. So now there's a husband-wife coaching team and a men's and women's. That's a unique thing. I mean, what's it like to coach with Link?
It is. It's good. I'm super excited for not only like our wrestling program, but for our school in general. It's a big step in the right direction for our school. I know everybody's excited about it, but coaching with Link, I think it's just second nature. I've been around him for 11 years now. It's no different than I watched him coach at OCU. Everybody has their days where they butt heads. But, I mean...
Did you just call your husband a butthead?
No. Maybe. No. But it's good. I mean, like, I know where he's coming from. I think I think I have an advantage because I know what he wants. I know where he's coming from. I wrestled for him. I watched him run programs. And we just want what's best for our programs. And we want the same goals. We have the same goals. And, he's really experienced. And he's, I knew as a wife, like, what he brought to the table, but I'm learning to, like, appreciate even more what he does for the sport of wrestling because he is very, very involved, and he makes it look easy, which is probably why I get mad at him sometimes because he's a lot better at this than I am.
You mentioned, Kayla, the dynamic of not just coaching your daughter, but having the resume you have. And, it's not, I don't know if it's quite like the level like when, like in Oklahoma, people would stop and it's like, John Smith's kids wrestling. Well, you're a Hall of Famer. You're a world champion. And then your daughter's wrestling. And it's like, okay, well, it's still kind of a bullseye in some respects for her. How have you worked with her about that and, your legacy and making, trying to carve out that you're your own wrestler. And then also, there's a lot of overbearing parents in this sport too. How do you keep yourself from being that coach, that parent, with your daughter and, tying in all the accolades that your family has?
It's a hard balance. I feel like this year, coaching her on a college level, I always had I do have high expectations for her just because I know her potential. So coming into this season, and we talk a lot, she gets upset. She's like, oh, well, people just expect me to be you. And, I have to sit her down sometimes, and not so much anymore, but, I have to tell her that this is her sport, this is her time. Like, whatever she does is not because of me. It's because she's working hard to get what she wants. I don't think I was overbearing. I wanted a lot from her, but I say to her what I say to my athletes, and basically, if you're going to continue to wrestle and after college, it's going to be a long run. So, I used to get nervous before matches. I'm a normal parent. I used to get nervous. I used to get mad. But this year, I think I came to realize that she's going to take her losses. She's going to take her wins. And it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, And whatever she's working for now, hopefully it will pay off later. But it's a hard balance. It's a hard balance having both your parents as coaches and then being a student athlete and then, being a big sister too. She's got a lot on her plate, and I think she does a pretty good job.
Yeah, it's also a tough situation. Coach, if she wants to have some semblance of, a college life, a social life, there's the balance too. It's like, oh, well, coach's mom, mom coach. So, there's probably that bit of a distraction to it. But when you're looking at it from a wrestling standpoint of coaching your own kid compared to the other, is it really hard? Because we've seen the discussions back and forth. Or do you put more pressure on your child than you do the other kids on the team, or do you try to? How do you balance your kid as one of the rest of the crew versus being your kid?
Straight to the point, I expect all of my girls to wrestle like each other. I don't hold Kayla any. I mean, I'm sure I hold her to higher expectations, but not on the mat. That's like from a parent school point. But I expect all of my girls on my team to get good grades. I expect all my girls on my team to perform. It's not a coach's daughter thing. I think maybe coming into it, she was a little bit skeptical about it. But I treat all those kids like they're my kids, and none of them is held to a higher standard. They're all at the same standard to me.
You spent a lot of time at the training center. You had a very, like many of your colleagues in your age bracket that came through, and, colleges were just starting up for women's wrestling around 2002, and, Morris was one of the first programs. Moval was one of the first programs. And now, yeah, way back. So, yeah, we're that old, Kristie. So when we look at the way Kayla's coming through the system, there's cadets and junior women's tournaments. There's college women's wrestling. There is opportunities that you didn't have. The level of athletes coming in that you're recruiting now, what is that comparison like to when I mean, you were at the top at that level, but your other athletes you're competing against, the skill level, where does it compare?
There's a lot more skill level out there now, which is phenomenal. That's why I think our sport is taking off. There's a lot of, the Patricia Mirandas, the Sarah McMahons, there's a lot of talent out there. And I think that's what makes it so great. It's making all these colleges that are opening up women's wrestling the chance to have those powerhouses, and it just continues to grow. I think everybody that's doing what they're doing for women's wrestling is going in a great and awesome direction. There's no easy match out there anymore, and that's what I tell my girls. Nobody's going to have an easy match, even from schoolgirl on. Everything's going to be so tough, and the competition level is just it's good. I mean, that's all there is to it. I mean, it's nobody has an easy match anymore. It's the only way to put it.
Switching it up to your recent induction, you went in June, Honors Weekend. The second woman is a distinguished member as an athlete, and you look, Tricia Saunders is the first one. You're the second. I mean, when you get that call, what is that conversation like that you're going to go in?
It was kind of funny. I just almost was like a dumbfounded moment. You know what I mean? I was like, why are you putting me in? Like, I in my speech that when I told everybody kind of my background and everything, I never thought about being. I never did it to get anywhere. Like, it was my job, and that was that's what I was supposed to do, and that was my expectation. So getting that phone call and they're like, you're going to be in the Hall of Fame, you're just kind of like, why me? Like, you know what I mean? It just, for me, it was just like a why me moment. But going through the whole process and being there that first weekend in June, it was pretty cool, and it gave me a chance to kind of reflect and say, hey, look, all your hard work did pay off, and you did a good job.
With you and Tricia are the trailblazers in that respect, and Tricia being the first, what did that mean for you as a women's wrestler that when Tricia went in as a distinguished member?
It was really cool. It was really, really cool. I wrestled with Trish, and I looked up to her as a 17-year-old on those world teams, and to have her go in and be acknowledged for what she did, before women's wrestling was even on the map, it was phenomenal. And I think, once again, she was a trailblazer and set some high standards for girls to get into that Hall of Fame. So
we touched on the impact a little bit, and we're going to circle back on this on an upcoming interview when we actually sit down and talk about your entire career. But the fact that now there's two women in the Hall of Fame, and now you're a generation of your daughter and her teammates and all the other girls that are in this tournament. You're relevant to them because you're still relatively recent off your career ending, but that's somebody that they know and they can look up to. And how much is it the responsibility, or is that responsibility falls on you and Sarah and Patricia and Takara and that first Olympic team and Taylor, and then that grew, people that were on the trials and things of that nature. That 04, you didn't make the team, but that 04 era that really said we have a shot to make the Olympic team. So where do you think that responsibility lies on you guys to kind of be those role models now? And then there's the realization that, I'm not even 40 yet and I'm in the Hall of Fame.
I think it's always been a huge responsibility. When you take on this role, I guess, as an athlete, trying to make it to the Olympics, you're always kind of there. You always kind of have to, be a trendsetter and kind of do what you're supposed to do. So, I don't know. I just think that you just have to show these girls what they need to do, and I think we've all done a good job so far, kind of showing them, what needs to be done. So.
Lastly, 2016 was the biggest moment in American women's wrestling history. I was the announcer in Rio, and I was tearing up because I realized the impact of the moment, but also you know the athletes since they were cadet age, junior age. What did Helen Maroulis' moment mean to you as a wrestler, as a woman?
It was great. I really think that I had tears too.
I'm welling up right now just thinking about it.
It was so cool, and if it's anybody that deserved it, Helen is phenomenal. She is a great leader. She did all the right things. She, stayed focused, and she just did everything right. And for her to win and something that and do something that nobody's ever done in women's wrestling, it's huge. And I'm still 2 years later super excited for her.
And it's not like she beat somebody that was okay. She beat Superwoman.
Yes, she did beat Superwoman. Yes. And that's just like the icing on the cake for her. You know what I mean? It just goes to show that hard work does pay off, and it doesn't matter who you face. It doesn't matter if that person's a gazillion-time world champion. They put their pants on the same way, and it's, it all comes down to who wants to win, and Helen wanted it that day, and she got it. So
we'll have more from Kristie Davis on another episode of that'll be on the Hall of Fame Legends show, but she's got to do some recruiting. She's got some media guides in front of her. She's college coach, balancing the life and nursing and a parent. Kristie, always a treat.
Thank you.
The Short Time Wrestling Podcast is proudly outfitted by Compound Clothing. Shirts, singlets, custom gear orders, everything you need. Call up Cliff and the crew at cmpteamwear.com. First time listening? Well, you can change that by going to mattalkonline.com/getshorttime to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or listen on your favorite podcatcher at mattalkonline.com/listen.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to mattalkonline.com.